I think a lot of times people see the very sophisticated stuff and go, oh, well, that's too complicated. And then they do nothing.
Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Today, we're going to focus on money mindsets, increasing sales, and systematizing your business. Finding the right blend and taking the right steps at the right time. Look, you wear a lot of hats, and having experts to help you allows you to scale faster. But that's a choice you have to make. Matt is the mad scientist behind the data and development of the BGS revenue optimization system, as well as the revenue optimization BGS team of over 40 full-time experts. Although he won't tell you himself, he has become known as the top Shopify optimization expert in the game and spends a ton of time turning away people that want to work with him. Isn't it fun when you get to turn away people? I like doing that. Matt's got a keen eye for impediments to the customer journey and is great at interpreting the data to find the diamonds in the rough. He's got the ability to see things from the business owner's perspective, having run his own companies. Let's meet Matt and see how he does it. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Matthew Stafford. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks for having me.
Excited for the conversation. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah, so I've been self-employed since I graduated high school. And I actually bought the business of the guy that I was working for and turned that into, over time, a commercial concrete business. And I did that for about 23 years. And I went to a Tony Robbins event that was called Unlimited Power. And he was selling a DVD series there called Money Masters. And in that DVD series, there was a whole bunch of people that were basically making their living online and doing very well. And so I started listening to that series and set a goal for myself that within 5 years, I would be online rather than traveling around the country pouring concrete. I was on the road about 200 days a year. And almost 5 years to the month from when I went to that event and set that goal, I was able to sell the concrete business and move into basically online sales and go from there.
And that's a pretty dramatic shift. I mean, going from concrete to an online business. I've been to Tony Robbins, UPW. Tony is phenomenal at what he does. Business mastery is great. They have a lot of great tools inside of there. Tony gets a lot of the best business people in. And one of his buddies is Jay Abraham. Jay
Yep.
Abraham is literally the master at copywriting and changing your offer ever so slightly to really maximize the revenue that comes through. And I know Tony talks a lot about psychology and he talks about money. Back there is his big book, Money Master the Game.
Yep.
And actually, that was one of the first things that I learned in the money space was the reality is generating revenue or keeping profit is not that difficult, but there's all these psychological factors that kind of play into that. And as we were chatting before we hit record, you mentioned the same thing. I'd love to hear what your experience was.
Yeah. So I've had those issues. And the more that I would make, the more that I would find ways to get rid of it. And over time, understanding that our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with money, our relationship with others, it's all based off of stories that we have. And so obviously we help entrepreneurs make more money to build, grow, and scale their businesses. And when that happens, a lot of times they'll hit roadblocks. Well, one of those very real roadblocks is if they think that their business is going to max out at 100,000 a month, and then all of a sudden they struggle to get past that. And so their belief becomes their reality and they can't see outside of that. And so a lot of times that has been one of the very first things I look at is when they're stuck at a certain level, find out some deeper stories or issues that they may have that support that belief. Because a lot of times when you get rid of that or you actually expose it and they realize it, they can start to see beyond that and make changes very quickly.
How do you kind of uncover what those scripts are?
It's a little more complicated than probably what we're talking about here, but I do men's coaching, and it came from my own learning how to take care of stories that I developed growing up from a very difficult childhood. And so essentially and I do this with men, most men think their feelings, they don't feel their feelings. And so a lot of that will show up through some questions and asking them to do a couple different exercises. You'll find where they're blocked really quickly. But a lot of them don't even realize it. Like when you say, what's your goal? They're like, oh, I wanted to build this business to $10,000 a month so I could go build a real business. And then you find out like at $10,000 a month, they think that business is maxed out. And you go, okay, it's not really that. It's actually, you think that that's all it's got. And so you've stopped looking for other ways.
You know, it's funny. I probably should have had you on my other podcast, Richer Soul, because the first question I would have asked you is, how'd you grow up and how'd you learn about money?
Yeah.
And it is shockingly surprising to me how many highly successful people actually grew up poor. And it was through either poverty or through uncomfortable life situations that provided them the motivation to start a business, to move forward, to get the courage and the grit and the drive to be able to do that.
Yeah, I believe a lot of entrepreneurs have trauma in their past, and they've used a business thinking that if they build something that's successful, that then they'll be good enough. And so, yeah, I totally understand that. And I see it all the time. And so those conversations show up when you're helping someone, grow and scale their business, because every one of us has a set of beliefs that either limits us or gives us the freedom to go chase the things that we want. And everybody basically defines success a different way. And so those are very important questions in order to help someone become more profitable. Because if they don't believe that they can be, then they won't see their opportunities right in front of them. Now I always liken it to if I had a radio sitting here on my desk, but it wasn't turned to the channel that had all the music in, it doesn't mean that there's not music playing right now. It's just we don't have it tuned to that frequency. But as soon as we do, the music starts playing. So the music's always there. We just aren't aware of it. And it's the same way in our businesses. The money is all around us and we're just not aware of it because we don't see the frequency that that particular channel's on.
And that's true. And I'm in a lot of high-end entrepreneur groups, and that's literally what half the conversations are about, the mental side of the game and overcoming the scripts, overcoming ourselves and dealing with much of that. So I totally agree with that. So let's talk about it from the practical side, right?
Sure.
You help clients, if I'm correct, get noticed and then take that notice, that interest, and convert it into business. And so I know for a lot of business owners, this is really a struggle because you ask them, well, how do you get business? And they're like, I'm not sure. We do all these different things and the phone rings. And like, which one works? I don't know. And so it always seems to be a struggle. How do you do it so that it's
Methodical.
methodological? You know, that,
Methodical. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So we use data. So we're very, very big on data. So we use Tag Manager and Google Analytics and that stuff so that we know that if someone's running an ad and they click on your website, we know where they came from, what source, where they clicked on the website, what things generated a call, what things they exited, et cetera. And so then over time, the things that work more, we go, oh, okay, how do we get that in more places on the website? And the things that aren't working, we want to remove them. What we find is a lot of times people have too much information on their site because they think that people need to know everything. And in all reality, they need to know just enough to want to make the call or need to know just enough to trust you to make the call or to buy the item. And so the way that I describe it is your website is your conversation with your potential client that you don't get to have. So your website needs to do that in a clear, concise manner. Otherwise, the conversation goes nowhere. And the only way that you can do that is through understanding how people interact with your website, understanding if they're clicking on ads, what ads are driving them. And we use that data to continue to optimize and make it more and more efficient.
Why don't more businesses have these systems in place? Because I noticed, especially on the smaller side, it's difficult for them. Is it just that they haven't asked for it? Is it that it's expensive to do? And so you've got to get to a certain size before you can do it? What are kind of those barriers?
I think the real barrier is as an entrepreneur, you're wearing a lot of hats. And so understanding the data and then actually getting good at it. And if your website even has enough traffic in order to be able to basically make things statistically significant or not, all of that matters. And so instead of having a mentor that says, hey, here's a set of best practices, use these, which is what we do until you get big enough that you can run your own tests. Yeah, it makes it very difficult for them to go, oh, okay, I want to make sure that all my data is correct. And then I want to know how to do a test. And then I want to know how to understand it and make the changes. And so it really is an entire business in itself, understanding that data and then using that data to optimize. So I think the average business owner can find someone that has data, for their particular type of business, or even I would actually say their type of website, because an e-commerce website is going to convert like almost every other e-commerce website. Obviously, there's a little contextual difference. But then a lead gen is going to have, lead gen, another one if it's click to call. It just depends on that, but you're going to be able to find the data that matches your lead sources or your revenue source.
Where is the typical, like what you've seen, at what revenue point does this become easy to afford?
Well, I guess it would depend on like your average order value and then the volume you're doing. Obviously, we have some people that it's $3,000-$4,000 an item, so they can afford it very quickly. Other people have an average order value of $100, or a call's worth $150 to them. And so, yeah, the metrics are totally different. I'll tell you, the way that I learned was I hired someone to teach me Google Analytics for $1,000, and I got 6 phone calls. And then I hired a guy on Upwork that could install Google Analytics on my site for $150. And then just I dug into the data because I was really good at running ads, but ads would convert really high sometimes and not convert very good, and high again. And then they would be expensive. And I was like, man, I don't understand how I'm going to get any type of consistency to plan my business the way that this is going. And so I realized in that data is a lot of extra information that makes much easier to get your site to work a lot better. And if you think about it, the average site for e-commerce is 2%. For lead gen, it's like 20%. That means for every 100 people, 80 people are leaving without giving you their information. And on e-commerce, out of every 198 people are leaving. And everybody thinks like, oh, okay, I need to buy this many more leads, or I need to run this much more traffic. And for me, I was running the traffic and I thought, well, that doesn't make any sense. In all reality, if 98 people came and left without buying, I just want 2 more of them, of the 98 that already raised their hand. And now I'm selling 4 out of 100, and none of my competitors can compete with me. And that was literally my mentality. And so the better we could get our site to work with the customer, the competition really became irrelevant. And we did that through multiple sources. We would call them, we would talk to them. One of the greatest things that we ever did, and it's probably responsible for 4 or 5 of our 10 biggest wins ever, and all of our big wins are worth millions of dollars, was putting a pop-up on the thank you page that said, what was the one thing that almost made you not buy? Well, what do all those customers do? They tell you the things that were difficult and the things that they didn't understand. And so now you go back through your website and fix that, and it automatically starts working better because they see it from a different perspective than the owner does. The owner's looking at his website. How do I tell you everything that I sell, show you all my products? And the customer doesn't look at the website and go, man, what's everything that you sell and how many products you have? They actually say, how do I find what I'm looking for? So 2 totally different paths. And until the owner can get that mindset of looking at their website from the standpoint of whoever their ideal customer is, needing to find the information or the answer to a question, then there's always going to be a mismatch and a lot of opportunity in order to optimize and create a lot more profit for your business.
We look at 16 levers in the business, and one of those levers is conversion rate, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And especially when you have such a low conversion rate as you're talking about, 2%.
Yeah.
My number one question isn't how do I double my leads, because that's expensive.
Yeah.
It's how do I turn 2% into 3% or 5% or 10%?
100%.
How do I change my close ratio? For other businesses, they might be at 30%. But in those types of businesses, there's no reason they can't go from 30 to 60%. And we start to look at reasons why. And every business is different. In some of those businesses, maybe they're getting assigned to a different salesperson. So are some salespeople converting at 80 and some converting at 20?
Yeah.
And so maybe it's a people thing. You got to take the time to really dig in and figure out where that break point is and what that issue is. The other question, though, that I would ask is, are we advertising to 98 of the wrong people out of 100?
Right.
And so that's a whole different way of looking at the prism. If we could not spend money to get maybe 60 or 70 of those people. Now, this is where I think people struggle. Wait, you mean you want me to go from 100 leads to 30? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
But those 30 leads are
10 of them will convert.
10 of them will convert. And now you've got money, once you've figured that out, to buy the other 70 leads. But those are better 70 leads, not the 70 leads that didn't work, because it was a mismatch.
Yeah, it's that old advertising adage. Yeah, 50% of our advertising is working really well. We just don't know which 50%. And so that's where tracking your data matters, because you can figure out what part's working, double down on that, and stop the other stuff.
And for some of my clients, this is super easy. They've got the data. For other clients, we've got to figure out how to build those data sets, how to capture the data, how to do things slightly differently. And honestly, it's even as simple as different landing pages. So in other words, we go old school. You get a lot of people in the trades will send a postcard. Well, each postcard goes to a different landing page. Creating a new landing page is like 2 minutes of work.
Sure.
But each postcard is tied to a landing page. All I have to do is look at the landing page metrics. Which postcard got the most people to show up and at least look at my website or call a phone number or do something? And it's simple things like that that can be done, that even if you don't have great systems in place, you can build a system that works for you to be able to do that.
Yeah. If you're tracking any data at all, then you can start to reverse engineer what's happening and start pairing things out. And over time, like, we're certainly a lot more sophisticated than we were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, when we would run a test, we would run it for 7 days and then run the next one for 7 days. And then we realized, well, that's not near as good as if you're running it simultaneously on the same traffic and figuring it out. But yeah, we were still able to get wins and continue to become more profitable and build the businesses until we got more and more sophisticated. I think a lot of times people see the very sophisticated stuff and go, oh, well, that's too complicated. And then they do nothing. And doing nothing is why their competition nowadays, you can't get away with that. Like, cost of ads and CPMs and everything else keeps going up, where we could get away with it back when it was the wild, wild west. Nowadays, like, you can't. Most businesses that are driving paid media don't make money on the front end. They're happy to break even to acquire a customer and then be able to sell to them over and over and over. Where in the 10 years ago, we were highly profitable on the front end and could make businesses that were totally front end focused.
That brings up a question. There is a dramatic shift going on in this whole landscape. AI is changing the game, not only from creating content, but today, if you Google's going to give you an AI answer. They're not going to give you a website. And from what I understand, greater than 60% of people aren't even clicking through. They're just getting an answer and leaving. So the game is kind of shifted. What have you seen and how are you adapting?
Yeah, so we don't run paid media. We optimize the website. But yeah, we work very closely with the people that do run the paid media to the sites that we work on. And so for sure, that's a whole nother business all by itself. But what does matter is that when you do have an ad that you're serving to people, that it's congruent with what they're going to see on the website. So you'd be shocked at how many advertising agencies, they'll get the clicks, but then it doesn't convert. And then so we'll go look at it and say, oh, well, yeah, when they clicked on this ad and came to the site, that feels like a different experience, or it's not, doesn't appear that it's very similar to, what they think they would land on. And so getting those things aligned matters a lot. And most people don't have a business that they shut their ads off. There's very few brands that don't do paid media. And so you need that, and you need to understand it, the congruency between the ads and the person that's running the media and your website.
And I think when you're a business owner and you're wearing all these hats, it gets overwhelming.
Yes.
But you mentioned this earlier. Hey, I found a way to do this by taking a reasonably priced course. Then I paid somebody to do one part of it, found an expert. And even if you're not going to do the work, I think understanding the principles will help you to get better results.
100%.
Because one of the issues I found is most marketing companies are great at marketing themselves, they're not always so great at marketing the client. Or the client's not willing to do the hard work of explaining who their ideal client is.
Yeah, or they don't know. A lot of times they don't actually even know that.
They don't.
They think, oh, my product works for everybody. Well, that's true, but works for everybody doesn't mean everybody wants it or everybody's at that price point or everybody, likes the particular flavor or whatever. So yeah, I understand what you're saying.
You have to find the right match, because when you do something for everybody, you do it for nobody.
Hmm.
And you're not differentiating yourself. And I think in today's world, differentiation is really what it comes down to. And if you can't differentiate yourself, then you're competing on price. And if you're competing on price, you're racing to the bottom. And now you have no margin and no
Yeah,
profit.
we have hundreds of clients in our membership. And so what we see is that when you try to be like a general practitioner or general store, you're competing with Amazon, and that's a losing game. Like they convert at 75%. So 75 out of 100 visitors buy something. They go there to buy something. They don't go there to shop and see if they can browse and look over things. And so if that's who you're trying to compete with, that's a losing game. What we find works and works really well is when you have a very specific niche that you handle and you are a specialist in that. That's what people want to deal with nowadays. They want, if they're looking for a particular cooking item, then if you're the guy that, handles cutting boards, awesome. And then you can sell them on why your cutting boards are the best. But if you're trying to sell them, all these other things, it just doesn't work the same as if you're very specific.
And that makes a lot of sense. And we see the same thing. We try and get all of our clients to niche into certain areas and focus on that. And sometimes it's also figuring out the market match of what you can deliver. Who is it work for? Do you have the right price points? And sometimes you have to shift the business to be
Sure.
able to do that.
Yeah, we've certainly done that. We've had people that basically had like drop ship stores, and then they find a couple products that work, and then they turn that into that's their niche. And then they just go deep rather than wide. And the good thing about that is when you can be specific with only a few items in a particular category, that saves you a lot of money in inventory, because instead of having to handle all kinds of products and all kinds of inventory, and some sells really good and some doesn't, by having a very specific audience many, many times, you can sell the same product in bundles and different things and make it a lot more profitable and a lot more successful by not having too many things.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because that is one of our other levers that we talk about. If you think about it, people say, well, they look at their P&L and it says they were profitable. They look at their bank account and there's no cash. And they're like, well, what happened? I'm like, inventory, right? If you've got $500,000 in inventory, somebody paid for that. You
Yep.
did.
Yeah.
And that's $500,000 that's not in your pocket. It's sitting on the shelf. And the longer it sits on your shelf, the less valuable it becomes, because it's old. Maybe it got damaged, or maybe it no longer relevant in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And so being able to manage inventory is extremely, extremely important.
Yeah, we always say that for sure 20% of your products bring 80% of your revenue. So every year you should be getting rid of a lot of items on your site that actually aren't creating the majority of the sales. And we found literally 100% of the time, reducing the number of SKUs creates a higher conversion. And so the paradox of choice is very real. If you give them a whole bunch of options and they have to make a decision, a lot of times that decision is, I'll just come back later when I have more time. Well, that's not a conversion. And now you're going to pay to get them to come back again. So we've had people that had as many as like 13 colors of an item, of a particular shirt or bracelet or whatever. And we say, listen, these 4 are making 90% of your sales. We recommend that you have no more than 5. And they do that and their conversions double. And the reason is Like, oh, okay, I like pink. Oh, I like red too. Oh, that blue one's nice. Oh, I don't want to buy all three. I'll just decide later. But when you have, we say if you only offer two flavors of ice cream, chocolate or vanilla, it's pretty easy. Like you just make a decision. But you go into Baskin Robbins and it takes a half hour because you got to try 7 samples and then decide which one you like the most. And when you're online, the longer that you keep them there before they make a decision and check out, the bigger chance that someone's going to come along and interrupt them. They're at work, they got a call to go to, a bunch of different things. If you look at when your sales are happening, most people's sales are happening while people are at work. And so those are actual things that you need to think about. How do you make that functional and efficient so that they can make those decisions and keep moving through the site without the friction?
And we're big fans of 3, right? A low end, a mid, and a very high end. And the high
The
end is
better,
the price
best.
anchor. The mid is what everyone's going to buy, and keeping it simple like that. Yeah. And they've done psychology tests. If you give people too many choices, they buy nothing. You give them 2 or 3, they're much easier to make a decision and move forward. And it's putting metrics to all of these. And I tell my clients, you don't need a perfect metric. You need a directionally accurate, consistent metric. So if we're consistently right 80% of the time, that's good enough.
Yeah.
We're going to do that. We're not going to waste hours upon hours trying to be perfect because it's just not worth the effort. The incremental isn't there. Do your best, figure out your proxies, and kind of move forward.
Yeah, for us, it seems like for some reason everybody thinks in split testing, oh, the color of the button matters. Truth of the matter, it doesn't matter at all. What matters is that button stands out and doesn't look like anything else on the page. So if your theme is black and yellow, then your button shouldn't be black or yellow. It should be green or blue or orange or something that stands out so they know what the next most important action is. Doesn't blend in. It literally goes, oh, okay, this is the next thing to do. What matters more on the buttons is actually what it says. We get much higher conversions and actions taken when the words are very specific for that page. So like add to cart, not buy more or buy now, because they're not buying it yet. They're actually adding it to the cart. So add to cart or click to call or click to, connect or whatever, learn more, different things like that. Micro commitments, the text on the buttons convert much higher than changing the color of it.
It all comes back to psychology, which is kind of where we started.
Yes.
I also know you mentioned you've been implementing the EOS system.
Yep.
What prompted you to put that into your business?
So I heard the book and I hired a CEO at the same time I was listening to it. And he had implemented it in 2 of his businesses that he had exited. And so right away we were very aligned. And he was like, absolutely, I love the system, totally believe in it. And so to be totally honest, I was new to it, but loved the book and the concepts and believed in it immediately. And so he's been very instrumental in the last 3 months of really helping us dial it in and get it built into how, we're getting everybody rolling the ship in the same direction. Everybody has their own rocks that they move.
And so you said you hired a CEO, correct?
Yep.
So that means you're kind of stepping out of the business. You're truly an entrepreneur. And at this point, if you want to do it well and do it easily, having the handful of metrics, just like we've been talking about all the time, measuring them, thumbs up, thumbs down, what needs to change is definitely the way to go. And because EOS helps you systematize your business, you're also increasing your business's value dramatically because you're removing Matthew from it, which is the number one obstacle in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You're no longer the bottleneck. So yeah, we're big fans of EOS. We love how it works. And our financial dashboards kind of roll right into EOS because that's one of the missing parts that EOS doesn't do well and that we are great at. And we just love putting them together.
That's awesome. Yeah.
If people would like to learn more about your company and how you serve them, what's the best way for them to find you?
Our website is buildgrowscale.com. And that Basically, our website focuses a lot around e-commerce, but you can also email me, matt@buildgrowthscale.com, and I'll get it. And I work very closely with a lot of digital marketers and click to call and stuff like that. So even though the website doesn't talk about it a lot, the data and the analytics to get people to take an action is very similar, and it's all website based. And so any one of those things we'd love to help you with.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Have you ever examined your money mindsets? And are they holding you back? It's an important observation that you probably need to make. The levers we talked about are different for each business. And the way we look at it, there's 16. But the most important thing is to focus on the lever that's got the most impact at the current time. See, it's a lot easier to do one thing where you know where to focus for maximum impact. Think of the concept of doing less, having less offerings, and charging more. When you simplify and focus, you don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful, which is what we talked about today. And don't forget, we always focus on the bottom line.
If you'd like for us to be a part of your profitability journey, we have different programs available ranging from do-it-yourself to one-on-one coaching. Our course, The Profit Blueprint, teaches you everything you need to know to transform your profitability. There are 3 different tiers ranging from DIY to done with you so that businesses of all sizes can get the support that's best. Join the waitlist in the show notes to get more information and be a part of the next cohort. If you want a done-for-you service, you can hire us as your chief profitability officers. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $10 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
Remember to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about how to live the ultimate life and be the best business owner you can be. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.